On this podcast, you'll find interviews with high-performing, successful individuals in life sciences. On a weekly basis, we cover their proven methods, principles, strategies, and mindsets to implement new technologies that scale to meet the needs of people in our world.
Jason, welcome to the Life Science Success Podcast. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Don. Thanks for having me.
Would you take a moment and just tell listeners a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I've been in biotech and biopharma for over 20 years, always in biologics development, bringing new therapies into the clinic, and then fortunate enough to bring numerous products through to global commercialization. Building groups with different strategies to help enable impactful therapies to reach patients.
Yeah, and the organization that you're with now, you founded it, is that correct?
That's right.
CTMC?
CTMC, that's right. So, I had a pretty, if you want to call it, standard biotech career. I was leading groups in biopharmaceutical companies. The last organization before I sort of took this pivot was site head of a 600-person group, developing new biologics, mostly monoclonal antibodies. And then I got captivated by cell therapy. I think cell therapy has the potential to be transformative to healthcare. The ability to engineer living drugs, and right now mostly focused on curing cancer with single-dose treatments, I think has such potential. And yet there were so many challenges with that in terms of developing controllable manufacturing processes, even defining those as therapeutics. And so I thought my background could be a good fit for trying to solve some of those challenges. I connected with MD Anderson Cancer Center, and they recruited me for a really interesting role as almost to start up an internal biotech at MD Anderson to work with researchers, industrialize their cell therapies, and then bring them into the MD Anderson clinic for initial proof of concept studies to see how well they worked. I thought that was just a pretty cool setup.
Sure.
And could be really impactful. And so we did that 4 years ago, moved down to Houston, started this new group at MD Anderson. We acquired a biotech's cell therapy development and manufacturing facility. It was Bellicum Pharmaceuticals' 60,000 square foot facility, which was quite new, built to very high standards, and located only 2 blocks away from MD Anderson Cancer Center main treatment center. So we've now built the group up to about 80 people, and we expanded the model from not only taking MD Anderson invented products, but now we've partnered with several biotech companies to help them do essentially the same thing, industrialize their therapy and get it to patients as quickly as we can at MD Anderson. So it's a pretty differentiated model, and I think it comes from trying to look at the cell therapy field and seeing, well, what are the similarities with other therapeutic modalities and what are the differences? And what do we need to do differently, or what could we do differently to accelerate the whole field? And so, it seems in some ways intuitively obvious that, but maybe not everyone picks up on it, that autologous cell therapy is one of the few therapeutic modalities where the supply chain begins with the patient. Take a patient's own cells and then start the manufacturing process. And so having manufacturing connected with the clinic in a geographical way, physically close, makes everything simpler in terms of coordination.
Right.
As well as, we're infusing living drugs, and the connection between what we produce and how the patient responds is more intimate than I think most other modalities. So it made sense both physically and in terms of information sharing to have those two aspects of drug development connected.
It seems like there are so many therapies that are also coming that really kind of use that model that you're talking about, where we're taking cells from the patient that then creates a logistical problem in a bit, to
Yeah,
try and manage and figure out, okay, so how do we manage both the patient and the patient's health
yeah,
while you're, sort of remanufacturing, if you will, the cells that are going to go back in.
exactly.
And so I think it's absolutely brilliant to be so close to such a major, cancer center as well.
MD Anderson is just an amazing place. It has, everyone knows about MD Anderson's reputation, but when I got there, I was even blown away by the scale and the depth of knowledge there. It's 24,000 people. So it's like a good sized biopharma in
Oh,
the
sure.
language we're
Yep.
used to talking about. 24,000 employees, all focused on cancer care, research, delivery, all aspects of cancer. And in terms of scale, they run a massive number of clinical studies. By far, the most cell therapy trials. But actually, if you even add up the second and third largest centers who run trials, they still run barely as many as MD Anderson does by itself.
Yeah.
So the ability to set up these trials, recruit the right patients for the right therapy, and really figure out in a short period of time with a small number of patients the potential of this therapy and whether it works. Or, sadly, not everything we do works, but let's figure that out quickly and move on to the next one if it doesn't.
Absolutely. In terms of the press releases that I've seen for the relationship, I saw resilience also met in the message. So just
Yes.
curious, where does resilience come in, and is that the manufacturing arm or is it
Yeah.
something else?
Great. Um, so So we initially built the group within MD Anderson, and then a year ago, almost exactly a year ago, we just celebrated our 1 year anniversary. Um, we decided to give us maximum flexibility and get access to some manufacturing partners. We would spin the group out as a standalone LLC that's a joint venture between MD Anderson and National Resilience. National Resilience, as you may know, is a very ambitious young company, about 3 years old, that's raised a significant amount of capital, well in excess of $2 billion, on the premise of reinventing complex biologics manufacturing in terms of developing the best technology, the best people, the best facilities to not just perform services, but to really enable complex biologics to reach their full potential. And so when we started talking with the resilience guys, we could see that we were very aligned in our missions and made a lot of sense to create a joint venture, which gives us a lot of flexibility to maintain a close relationship with MD Anderson, as we talked about, but as well create this relationship with resilience for um, being able to onboard their innovative technologies that they develop, as well as provide a smooth on-ramp to partners after we demonstrate proof of concept in the clinic to access Resilience's growing commercial network.
Excellent. And then in terms of announcements potential at Bio 2023, where we're at now, is there anything big that you're announcing while you're here?
Yeah, we just had our 1 year anniversary earlier this week. So that coincided with Bio, which is great. It's been a fantastic first year. We've filed 3 INDs in the first 6 months since we spun off on novel cell therapies brought into the clinic. We've progressed on the 7 clinical studies that we're supporting. And just two or 3 weeks ago, we announced that we were the recipients of a CPRIT grant. CPRIT is the Cancer Prevention Research Institute of Texas, which is an amazing institute that's been funded with over $6 billion to push the frontiers of cancer research and prevention forward in the state of Texas. And so we were the recipients of a $9.1 million grant to help us develop cell therapy platforms, improved ways of making these cell therapies for our partners and eventually for our patients.
I'm sure that money could go to good use. I mean, our space is in such need, I feel like, of constant investment, right? Just a lot of people coming to the table, both with, the idea of, a new therapy, as well as the need, just to carry out existing research. And it takes such a long period of time. It's one of those things that need, just constant feeding as well.
Yes, absolutely. And I think even more important as the uh, IPO market is a little bit frozen still,
Right.
that these alternative sources of funding are able to step up. We're really thankful for the collaboration with CPRIT. It's an amazing institution, and we're looking forward to performing on that collaboration.
For the Bio 2023 conference, the theme is Stand Up for Innovation.
Yeah.
So, how does CTMC, kind of live that theme as well?
Yeah. I think in addition to, if all we did was take novel cell therapies, bring them into the clinic, and try and cure cancer, that would be pretty good innovation. But I think what we're trying to do is do it in a different and even improved way to accelerate that. And so, just in the way we're structured as a joint venture between the leading cancer center and the leading complex biologics manufacturer, I think that setup is innovative. And then what we try and do with our partnerships is put speed and robustness at the forefront of everything. We are able to structure our business relationships to enable that, creating aligned incentives rather than fee-for-service activities where essentially, if you structure something as fee-for-service, you're going to do services and get paid fees. We structure things as partners are going to come to us at the research stage when they have really interesting, let's say, mouse data. And we're going to do everything essentially they need to get them to 15, 20, 25 patients of clinical data, robust clinical data with strong correlate analysis, knowing whether that drug, that cell therapy works or doesn't work. And we structure it with that end-to-end goal in mind. So I think the way we partner is quite innovative as well.
And so, do you have, I guess, are the examples of potential customers coming to you? Are they
We call them partners, not customers.
okay? So, partner, are they more large pharma, or are they all across the gamut inside of life sciences, from small biotechs?
Mostly it's been preclinical biotech who haven't built out all of the capabilities needed to bring a product into the clinic. And so rather than them, each individual company having to hire a head of clinical and build out a whole team, and a head of regulatory build out a whole team, head of CMC and build out a whole team, we can be that product development arm for those research-based companies, as well as handle all of the logistics for the clinical studies. So I think that's where the efficiency can come. It's a very capital efficient model for these preclinical biotechs. And I think in this environment, it's very appealing.
Yeah, yeah, and so, I mean, obviously, if somebody's starting out now, that would be a good time to come in and have a conversation with you. But also, if they've initially maybe taken some early steps, but still, aren't kind of embedded with a lot of infrastructure, they have an opportunity as well to go.
Yeah, absolutely. We partnered, so we partnered both with MD Anderson faculty. So we brought a product through all the IND enabling studies and the FDA interactions with a project that was the brainchild of a professor and a postdoc. And together with them and us, we were able to do everything to bring that product into the clinic. So it's almost like we're, a biotech in that sense, much more than, let's say, a CDMO. We partnered with a company in Factus that was also a CPRIT award winner based in Houston. And they essentially had, for their operations group, 5 people. We worked with those 5 people. we brought them from contract signing to IND in 10 months. And that product is now in the clinic being evaluated for cancer treatment.
Now, again, a potential accelerator even for companies to leverage your skill and, not just the infrastructure, but also the skill that you have as well.
Exactly. Exactly. I think if we can find these innovative ways of partnering, we can accelerate these very impactful single dose, potentially curative treatments reaching patients and advancing the whole field quicker as well.
Perfect. So there are 3 questions that I'd like to ask every guest. What inspires you?
It's going to sound a bit corny, but it's just the patients. I mean, being part of MD Anderson, I've always been very patient-centric. I chose, I could have done a lot of things in my career, but I chose to work on therapeutics to impact patients. That's been the guiding principle for my whole life. And so now with cell therapies, you're so close to the patient. We literally deliver these therapies down the street into the hospital to the patient room where they're infused. So our guys go into the hospital, and lots of times these patients are so excited about getting their cells back to fight their cancer that they're like, "Oh, there my cells are. Come on, let's take a selfie with the guys who made my cells. Let's go kick this cancer's butt."
Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's great to hear.
yeah. It's amazingly inspiring.
Yeah, very touching, I'm sure, to be that close as well. So I know oftentimes I get pretty emotional whenever, you hear patient stories and kind of the torturous events that kind of lead up to the point of treatment. And then, hopefully treatment results in something positive, but, so many times it doesn't, right? And so, one cancer researcher that I used to work for actually had told me at one point, he's like, look, to some of these patients, it's not necessarily living forever. That's not their goals. For some of these patients, it's make it to the next birthday or next wedding or whatever. That could be their goal. And it's such a touching thing to know that there are people that are so close that, can handle that. It was too much for me to bear. So I was just like, look, I get that it takes a very special person to be in that position, right? And taking a picture with your cells that are manufactured is a great way to kind of celebrate that milestone.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's why I think, bringing it full circle down to what we started with, cell therapy's ability to transform healthcare and to be single dose curative treatments, once patients get the infusion, depending on the therapy, a high percentage of them are cured.
Sure.
The inspiring story of Emily Whitehead, who at 6 years old was told to go to hospice because they had no other treatments for her, was the first pediatric patient put on CAR T. She just got accepted to Penn and is going to be a college student, has her whole life in front of her. And she got one treatment.
Amazing.
So she's not a cancer patient anymore.
Right.
She's just a healthy person.
Amazing.
And I think that's the potential that we have. We just have to race to that. Yeah.
Jason, what concerns you?
What concerns me, honestly, is I think I hear a lot of talk about cost and the challenges, logistical and manufacturing challenges with autologous cell therapy, and they clearly are. We have to meet those head on. No one would say this stuff is easy. But we also have to be a bit patient. Like innovation, and there's such a community now focused on this. We will solve it. It's not something that gets solved in a year or two, or there's a silver bullet. But together, the sort of the village of a field in terms of the therapeutic innovators, the vendors who are coming up with new and better bioreactors and equipment to manufacture these, the analytic tools we have to better characterize them, better manufacturing processes, all of these things are going to come together to help increase the robustness, shorten the time, and reduce the cost. But if you're curing cancer with a single treatment that then patients are out of the hospital for the rest of their lives, the economics of that can work out okay.
Sure.
than being on chemo for years and years and being sick every 6 weeks and having to call out from work or check into the hospital all the time.
Absolutely. Can be an absolute game changer for sure.
Yeah.
What excites you?
Well, I haven't listed out enough yet. No, I mean, I think I think just tackling that same challenge. I mean, that's why I got into the field. It's going to take a concerted effort and innovation to overcome some of these structural challenges in the field. But I think we've created an amazing organization to do that in a differentiated way. And I'm so excited to lead the team. We have an amazing group of 80 people in Houston, Texas, and I think doing some things that can really help accelerate this entire field and accelerate these cures getting to patients.
Well, Jason Bock, thank you so much for being on the Life Science Success Podcast. Thank you so much for being here and telling me the story of CTMC and all the great work that you are doing with MD Anderson and patients.
Thanks so much, Don. Really appreciated the conversation.
Thank you for listening to Life Science Success. For complete details about this podcast, including show notes, how to get in touch with guests, and more episodes, please visit www.lifesciencesuccess.com. If there's someone you'd like for us to invite to the show as a guest, please let me know by sending me a message at the podcast website. Please click subscribe on your favorite podcast app, share the podcast, or tell a friend about it, and last but not least, rate the podcast. Thank you again.